25 away from 7 o'clock. It's just a few weeks away from the local government elections. What an exciting week it has been as far as campaigning is concerned. There's a lot to talk about. We can't talk about all of it. We'll take a look at the DA's distasteful manifesto posters, independent candidates coming to the party to make their voices heard, and Action SA fighting it out with the IEC. Political analyst Professor Sipho joining us. Prof, morning to you. I'm sure there's a lot you would like to talk about. Let's perhaps start with the DA. Poster, go, no go. So was this an own goal for the DA? Did they get this wrong?
Yeah, this is an own goal, but it must also be seen within the context of the national posture towards what happened in Phoenix. We have chosen not to talk about it, but it represents a general crisis because there are race issues, but there are also social issues. But what had shown the DA to be ill-equipped is for its understanding of the impact and the undertones that may not have been spoken about with regard to what happened in Phoenix. And of course, the DA is not alone. There have been other people who have also said what happened there when people were killed was also an act of people defending themselves and property without really also bringing the issue of vigilantes who have actually killed people. One must also ask, if the people who had been killed were white or Indian, would the country would have reacted this way? What has happened is that we have said, well, it happened, let's move on. And unfortunately, these things have a way of haunting us. And what happened here is that the DA, just like all of us, has been haunted by its own misreading and its lack of appreciation that lives were lost. And what people are saying is that Black Lives Matter. So the ANC itself had not given prominence to the tragedy. But what we can say is that the DA blundered by trying to exploit a tragedy that occurred without really understanding that we should have been more sensitive about it.
Very quickly, before I talk about independent candidates, Prof, briefly if you can, how damaging is this to the DA on the 1st of November?
Well, it is damaging because the DA still has to deal with the racial issues. Remember, most of its leaders who were black had been shown the door in a manner that was very disgraceful, where there was lack of appreciation. And you will see from time to time that the race issue flares up within the DA. So this is one that political parties, opposition parties will try to exploit. So to a certain extent, it will be damaging. But at the same time, there are people who are diehards who will say, yes, blunders do occur, and they occur to all parties. But the issue here is the DA does this damage it in a manner that says the record that it has of saying we deliver better than other parties, will that be erased? And I think diehards will continue to support the DA.
We still want to talk about Action SA and the IEC in a moment, but I want to ask you first, Prof, about the independent candidates. Seeing a lot on social media, not saying social media is the litmus test of South Africa, but it's a good starting point. Independents could be causing a few upsets on the 1st of November. You agree?
Well, I don't think they'll cause so much upsets because remember, when you talk about the independent and parties, the independents can only win at the level of awards. But in our electoral system, we also have a proportional representation. So other parties have one advantage, direct election of their members, as well as those who will come from proportional. I think it will be at the level of decision-making within councils that the independent will play a major role. But the flourishing of independence also suggests that the people are saying we are beginning to walk away from the parties, that because the people who are elected through parties tend to pay more allegiance to the parties than to the voters. It depends on how well they do. And if they do very well, then they might be upset. But the machinery that the parties have is far bigger than an individual that goes out there and campaigns for himself.
Yeah, the mechanization of politics is quite something in this country. Prof, final question to you then. Let's talk a little bit about the argy-bargy between Action SA and the IEC. Which way are you falling on this? What's your reading?
Well, I mean, there are three issues that will be considered. One is what is provided in law. And Action SA says nowhere in law does it suggests that if you have not provided an abbreviated name for your party, you should be excluded. So that's the first argument. Then the second argument that would be raised by the IEC is that we've taken reasonable measures. First, we have actually advised those Action SA to put to do like all other parties. But what the IEC has done, it has provided a logo. The issue for the court will be, to what extent is the logo sufficient to enable a voter to make the distinction and exercise the right to vote? The Action SA is still a new party. So what they would want is to say, our argument is that being a new party, we need both the logo as well as the name. But it will be the issue of reasonableness, that has the IC taken enough reasonable steps to accommodate and to enable parties to be, or voters to exercise their constitutional right to choose a party of their choice. And here the Action SA is saying we are prejudiced because our name is not there. So I think here it could go either way. The IEC would say you have your logo there, all you have to do is to amplify the message. But the court might actually rule that, well, you should have given them a chance. And the argument also presented by Action SA is that the IEC did not advise them to say, if you don't do this, this will be penalty of sorts. So that would be also probably something that is weak on the part of the IEC, if it did not warn them that your failure to submit an abbreviated name would mean that we will not use it.
Prof, I appreciate your time as always. The test of the reasonable person is probably what this is going to come down to. Always a pleasure. Political analyst, Professor Sipho.